You're okay, I've got you. Hold still for me, all right?
It hurts. It hurts so much.
I know it does. You're bleeding, but I'm stopping it. Keep breathing with me. Help's on the way. Just keep those eyes on me.
Is this your child? The question wasn't gentle. It wasn't curious. It was an accusation, sharp enough to freeze the entire row. Elena glanced up, heart pounding, as two air marshals loomed over the single dad beside her, hands inches from their holsters. His daughter slept peacefully, unaware of how quickly innocence could turn into danger. Passengers stared. Whispers spread, and Elena knew, if someone didn't speak up now, this mid-flight misunderstanding could turn into something far worse. This is the story of a CEO whose mid-air moment changed everything. Welcome, story lovers. Where are you watching from? Hit the like button and drop your city name in the comments so we can see how far our story travels. She wasn't the type of woman who blended into a crowd. Even on an early morning flight, Elena Marston, the youngest black female CEO in her industry, carried a presence that made people stand a little straighter. Success had sharpened her. But long before the boardrooms and headlines, she had learned to navigate a world that judged her twice before it ever listened once. Still, she moved through it with a quiet confidence, the kind that made others whisper her name even when they didn't recognize her face. Today was supposed to be routine, a cross-country flight, a speaking engagement, and a return home before her schedule swallowed her again. She had chosen a window seat, planning to review notes, catch a few minutes of rest before the chaos waiting on the other side of the landing gear. But when she reached her row, someone was already there, a man who looked exhausted in a way only life could explain. A single dad, though she didn't know that yet. She only noticed the gentle rise and fall of the child, asleep against his chest, and the way he adjusted himself to avoid waking her as passengers pushed past. Elena offered a polite nod as she settled in. She had seen 1,000 strangers on 1,000 flights. He was just another. Yet there was something about him, an unspoken heaviness tucked behind his tired eyes, that made her pause for a moment longer than usual. As the plane taxied, she scrolled through emails she didn't want to read, preparing herself for another day of being the only black woman in rooms built for everyone but her. She didn't expect anything unusual. Not here, not now. But life has a way of changing course mid-air, shifting without permission. And somewhere between the flashing seatbelt sign and the soft hum of the engines, the first hint of trouble, subtle, almost invisible, began to settle around them. A tension she couldn't name yet. A moment she wouldn't understand until much later. A moment that would turn an ordinary flight into something unforgettable. For the first hour, the flight felt uneventful. Quiet even. Elena worked through her presentation slides while the plane hummed steadily beneath her. The little girl beside her slept peacefully, her small hand still tangled in her father's shirt. Every so often, he would shift carefully, exhaling the kind of tired breath that hinted at battles no one saw. He never complained, never asked for help. He simply held his daughter close, as if she were the only thing grounding him. But the calm didn't last. It began with a flight attendant's lingering stare. Not the polite kind, not the curious kind, something sharper. Elena had seen that stare before, a look that traveled across her features and made an unspoken judgment long before she opened her mouth. Still, she dismissed it. She had learned not to assume the worst every time she felt misplaced scrutiny. Yet her instinct whispered that something was off. Then came the turbulence, a rough shake, sudden enough to jolt passengers awake. Elena grabbed the armrest, but before she could steady herself, the plane dropped again, harder this time. The man beside her reflexively reached out to shield his daughter. In the motion, her head bumped lightly against Elena's shoulder. He apologized softly, but Elena shook her head with a gentle smile. Exhaustion was written across his posture, and she didn't mind the closeness. In fact, for a brief moment she found it strangely grounding. The flight attendant, however, noticed. She approached with forced politeness, her voice tight as she questioned the man. Why was he crowding other passengers? Why couldn't he keep to his own seat? The tone was unmistakable, suspicion disguised as protocol. Elena felt the shift instantly. She had lived her life sensing these micro-moments where racism hid in plain sight. shaping interactions in ways others pretended not to see. The man's posture stiffened. He explained quietly that his daughter had been startled by the turbulence, that he was simply trying to keep her calm. His words were measured, careful, too careful, Elena thought. The kind of carefulness learned by people who had been disbelieved one too many times. But the flight attendant wasn't listening. She leaned in closer, eyes narrowing at his appearance, his skin tone, his clothes. Elena felt her heartbeat quicken. It wasn't her business, yet she felt herself pulled into the moment, her senses sharpening. Passengers nearby began to glance over, some with curiosity, others with judgment. That silent shift in atmosphere, the one black and brown travelers know all too well, was spreading like a quiet chill down the cabin. The flight attendant returned a second time, accompanied by another crew member. Their questions were firmer, accusing. Was the child really his? Did he have identification? Why did he seem nervous? Elena felt something twist inside her. The man's hands trembled slightly as he reached for documents, trying not to wake his daughter. His embarrassment, his fear, his helpless frustration, it all settled in the air like fog. Elena knew then she couldn't sit quietly. Not this time. Not while a father was being cornered mid-flight, judged for existing too closely, too visibly. And as the crew exchanged looks and whispered into handheld radios, she felt the tension rising fast, too fast. Something was coming, something she wasn't prepared for. A moment that would soon push the flight, and everyone on it, into dangerous territory. The moment erupted faster than Elena could process. One sharp jolt of turbulence shook the cabin again, and in that instant, the little girl clung tighter to her father. He instinctively wrapped his arms around her, whispering reassurance. But to the flight attendants, already suspicious, already searching for a reason to escalate, it became the spark they were waiting for. A voice crackled over the cabin intercom, calm, practiced, chilling. They were requesting assistance from any onboard security personnel. Elena's stomach dropped. She had seen enough to know what that meant. Assumptions were solidifying into action. Dangerous action. 2 men stood from the front rows, air marshals. They moved down the aisle with rigid authority, hands already positioned near holsters. Passengers watched, some with wide eyes, others with that awful, silent acceptance of someone else's nightmare unfolding. The father froze. His daughter whimpered softly, confused. He raised his free hand slowly, palms open, pleading with his eyes more than his words. He wasn't a threat. Anyone truly looking could see that. But the marshals weren't looking. They were reacting to a story they had already decided was true. Elena couldn't stay silent. Not while a man was being treated like a criminal for comforting his child. She spoke up, her voice steady but burning. She explained what happened, how the turbulence caused the movement. She insisted there was no danger here, but one marshal stepped closer, ignoring her. His hand hovered inches from his weapon. The father's breathing quickened. His shoulders tightened. Fear pulsed across his expression, raw, visible, heartbreaking. In that suspended second, Elena realized the truth. One wrong interpretation, one twitch, one panic-filled assumption. And this flight could end in tragedy, and she had only one chance to stop it. Dear audience, where are you watching from? Drop your city name in the comments. Elena stepped forward, not physically, but with the full weight of her authority. Her voice cut through the rising panic, steady enough to make nearby passengers turn toward her. She stated her name, her position, and repeated more firmly this time that she had witnessed everything. There was no threat, no crime, just a frightened child and a father doing everything he could to protect her. Something shifted. Not immediately, not completely, but enough. One marshal hesitated, glancing at her, then at the trembling man still holding his daughter. The second marshal lowered his stance slightly, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. The tension in the air loosened just enough for truth to seep in. The father's voice finally broke through, soft and shaking, as he assured them that his daughter was simply scared. He held her tighter, almost as if shielding her from the world's judgment. The marshals exchanged a look, then slowly stepped back, their authority retreating without apology. The flight attendants gave a stiff nod and hurried off, leaving behind the heavy stain of what almost happened. Elena sat in silence for a moment, feeling the weight of it all settle on her chest. This wasn't the first time she had seen someone judged before being understood. It wasn't the first time assumptions sharpened into danger. But sitting beside that father, seeing the fear in his eyes, made it hit differently, closer, deeper. He thanked her quietly, but Elena knew the gratitude wasn't just for her intervention. It was for being seen. As the plane descended, she realized this wasn't one man's story. It was a reflection of countless others. Moments where bias becomes a threat, moments where silence could cost a life. And the question lingered long after landing. How many more close calls must the world witness before it finally changes? Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more.